Welcome to Well Since You Asked Me, the podcast where curiosity sparks conversation. I'm Lynn, your host. Today's guest is Andrea M. Mosley, president of Beautiful Soul, LLC, where she helps visionaries and high performers align their soul's purpose with their real-life choices. We're unpacking modern relationships, soulmates versus divine partnerships, and what happens when you decide to leave, not out of pain, but from clarity. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's get into it. Andrea, I'm so excited to talk to you today, especially with the beginning of summer and we're all trying to find our booze. I'm more of a fall kind of girl, so I'm always falling in love during the fall, and I want you to leave by the summer, but here we go. I'm really excited to have you. So I wanted to start off with you just telling me a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you ended up in this work.
Wow, I ended up in this work because actually I feel like it's just my vocation. People are always coming to talk to me and ask me questions. So I just shifted in helping people create the lives that they want. Like my friends started saying that just being around me and talking to me, it shifted the way they thought about themselves. It collapsed timelines. They were able to create their dreams in a shorter period of time. So I just love being in this space and watching light bulbs come on and dreams come to fruition.
So when you talk about that, we were looking at this through the lens of relationships and whatever those new definitions of relationships are and how they've expanded and how they have been challenged, especially since COVID. What I heard from you there is that you do a lot of individual work. And so do you think that it's important to do that individual work before, during, after partnering up with someone?
All of the above. So it really depends on where you are as an individual, how you should proceed in doing the work. Some people do the work before because they understand maybe they exited a relationship that was well for them, left some scars. Maybe they know that they have some childhood wounds that are impacting how they feel about the opposite sex or themselves. And then during the relationship, a lot of times, if you haven't done any work, relationships bring up what you have experienced because, of course, we're all wonderful by ourselves as singles. We are fantastic. And then you get in a relationship and it's like ping, ping, ping. It's like, I thought I was past this. And so therapy or coaching or talking to someone, self-help work can help you work through those things that you feel like you were past. And you want to do that because you don't want to work out those things on your relationship and on your partner. It's best not to dump that there if you can and take it somewhere else so that you can have that experience and come back and allow the relationship to be as pure and whole as it needs to be.
Great. Yeah, I agree with that. It's hard work though, right? Especially when you have to do that self-reflection and you realize that there are some opportunities for improvement there and it's not them. It is you. So yeah, it's difficult. And we look at, I talked a little bit about COVID. And so there's this, I think another element to that is how relationships are shifting in terms of labels, in terms of definitions. Do you think that plays a part in it, or is that just a separate thing that's just happening?
Absolutely. It can play a part in it. I think all of the relationships that we are labeling now were already present. They were out there. People are just putting a label on them so that those relationships are more acceptable in the mainstream. So some people can struggle if there's anything outside of the heterosexual type of relationship. Again, that's why your individual work is important to find out what is necessary for you, what you would like to do. I remember when I got divorced, it was funny because one of my friends said, so what are we doing now? Are we straight, gay, bi, poly? And I was like, what? And she said,
okay. I didn't know I had options.
and she said, well, we have to ask now. So that's what happened. Like, right. People were we were used to seeing them in one aspect of their life. And then with these different labels, they were deciding, oh, I'm going to try this now, or this is what I'm doing. And maybe they always felt like that, the individual in reflection, maybe they always felt like that. It's like, I'm going to go ahead and act out how I felt. So I believe that's what happened. I mean, men had multiple relationships and now it's polygamy, but that's not new. Women have multiple relationships. There were people being sexually fluid. We just didn't talk about it. It was just the heterosexual was accepted,
Hmm.
and then everything else was maybe secret on who knew, right? Because there's some people
Right.
who knew about it and they were moving around in groups or organizations or clubs, and then some people just did it on their own.
So that's good to know because I'm going into this dating pool and I'm like, what? I feel like I'm playing a game of checkers and everybody else is playing chess. Like, what is happening? I don't know the rules here. But it's interesting to say that it's always been going on. And I didn't know it was because I had been in my marriage and I just wasn't aware it was happening, or if it's a societal shift. COVID, the Me Too movement. There's something I feel that has happened to make society more acceptable, more receptive to these different ways of being in a relationship.
I would say that society feels like it's more acceptable because not accepting you as who you truly are causes mental instability, becoming mentally unwell, which we now know being mentally unwell affects your body. So it can turn up as sickness. So people are saying, okay, let me just live my life because I don't want to be like Uncle so and so or, anyone in my family or these people that are depressed or suicidal. So that is what happened because again, COVID, we were all separated pretty much and had at least 2 years to sit to ourselves and think about who am I? What is happening in my life? It's the life that I have, what I want. It's the way that I'm living my life, how I want to live my life. So we had all these things going on inside of our minds and individuals started shifting and some people change how they want to show up in their sexuality. Some people change how they want to show up in their dress. People quit jobs. So that's what COVID allowed you to do some of that inner reflective work without all of the distractions that we've had before.
Makes sense. I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine, and we were talking about Gen Z. And she was saying that they like the labels. And I said, oh, wow, I thought that they would not like the labels. And so she said it was because of COVID and it helped them to find their group, their pack. And so when you think about that, I think about the isolation, but I also think maybe there is some kind of security in finding those connections with the labels. And so by saying that I'm this, now I find a tribe that I can connect with and I feel safer there.
Yes, you're safer there. And what everyone is looking for in relationships is to where do I belong? So you find where you belong. It's not necessarily being as accepted because I can accept you, but you won't belong in my group and I won't belong in yours. But it's a totally different feeling and a state of well-being to find the people that you belong to. And that is what labels do. And labels help you to understand and accept yourself and welcome all the parts of you that maybe you were rejecting and feeling bad about and or ignoring. So again, it's just going to produce an overall better, happy, and improve your quality of life.
Agree with that. And you think about it, it just goes across domains. And so your personal relationships, your work relationships, the things that you like to do when you can do that work.
Correct. You'll find the right hobbies, you'll find the movies, you'll find the places that you click, the restaurants, because everything is going to have a vibe that is aligned to who you are instead of walking out this space of constantly making adjustments to fit in to places where you don't belong. And people don't realize when we're constantly mentally doing the work in our mind and in our bodies to fit into spaces where we don't belong, that drains our energy. And that's where you can feel tired. And then you don't have the opportunity to live the fun, joyful life that you want because you're depleted from fitting yourself into a life that doesn't serve you.
I don't know this, but this is my opinion that I'm Gen X. And so I think that for Gen X, I always say that we're the most flexible generation. We can go from digital to analog. We're good. But there are some elements of society that have defined what romance looks like, what love looks like, what partnership looks like. And I think that sometimes my friends and the people in my circle have a hard time embracing this concept of being authentic and doing something that may go against the societal norms. And so I think that's that is a barrier that I see a lot of in different circles that I have.
It absolutely is or can be a barrier because, again, those ideas that we have growing up are ingrained in us and influenced from being a parent and how we were parented. The generation Gen Z was parented to like, hey, find out who you want to be. Probably because everyone before them had to fit into these
Mm.
constraints and be defined in these boxes. But before, if you take the religious with the moral constraints, the societal constraints, what happened in school, we were receiving messaging all the time, every day, in every way of how we were to behave and how we were to be. So to be authentic can feel like I am disappointing someone. I am not following the guide, the breadcrumbs of what my parents did before me. So how can I discount that? Because in your eyes, especially if you feel like the people before you were successful, if you feel like their marriages were solid, if you feel like them working a job and retiring was a good thing and something you aspire to, this idea of like being authentic can feel so vast and broad. It can be scary for you. There's no guide rails. It's like, hey, what do you want to do? And it's like,
Yes.
ever ask you that. So you grew up in a world that told you, do this, do that, step one, step two, step three, and that made you safe and secure. And if that's okay, then maybe that is your authentic. That is you being authentic because you're doing what feels aligned and makes sense to you. If it's not disruptive to you, if it's not upsetting to you, then that is what you need to do.
Agree with that. I think that sometimes, though, people do confuse what society thinks they should do, and there's this internal struggle. Society wants me to do, and then what I want to do, and then it gets confused internally, and you can't separate that out because it could be the guilt that they feel. I'm not sure, but I do think that I was thinking about when you were talking, I was like, I remember after I got a divorce, I was like, I had no business getting married in the first place. I remember losing my engagement ring, or yes, my engagement ring. And I was like, I mean, he spent a lot of money on it. He wasn't, but I didn't care about being married. I
Mm-hmm.
did care about being a mom. I always wanted to be a mom, but I didn't know that there was a path for me to be a mother without getting married because there's the steps. Like you said,
Right.
there's steps. And so
Yes.
you take that and I never knew that I was allowed to do that without being labeled something else.
Correct. And so that's what happens. And so that's where you're like, okay, well, let me follow this path
Right.
because I want to be socially accepted.
Yes.
I want to know, I want to belong. I don't want to be ostracized or thought of in this way. My children have to go through. So that is exactly what it is because outside of what is seen as the typical path are multiple ways that you can accomplish what you desire. However, when you're not exposed to it or not allowed to even believe or see it, it's not,
Yes.
it's a possibility, right? So you stick into, I'm just going to do this then, and I'll just make the
Yes.
best of it. And again, you're going to stick into it because guess what? There are multiple people around you that made the same choice and they're saying, oh yeah, that's how it is. This is what it is. It's not perfect, but, and so you're like, okay. And then you trudge along and trudge along until many of us did. And then COVID came and it's like, wait,
Right.
no.
Yeah. That's
And we
exactly.
divorces at that time or relationships that just ended.
And so that is curious to me. And I always think about these major things that happen in society that shifts different aspects of our world. And so you think about, okay, there are thousands of people that died, right? So that it's horrible, but it also impacted other things in our lives. And you just don't really think about that. But I look at celebrities because that's what we have access to. That's what we have insight into. And that there were all of these long-term marriages and they're like, yeah, I'm out of here. You're like, what? You've been married for 242 years. Like, and I
Yes.
just find it interesting and fascinating that I just see that there's that correlation between maybe it is like for my generation and we're at a big age now and we're just like, you look at that person, you've been looking at it for 2 years, and you're like, I literally don't want to die with you. Like, I like you, but no, I don't know. I thought that there was an interesting correlation there and that internal struggle.
We can call it an internal struggle. I also like to call it just an internal awakening.
Ooh, I like that.
Part of ourselves that were maybe asleep because to follow sometimes not sometimes, to follow the path that is not yours, you have to put parts of yourself asleep to accomplish it. You have to deaden some parts. You have to say, I'm not going to look over there. You compartmentalize. So we separate ourselves in so many ways in order to fit into these paths and boxes that were set before us. And COVID awakened a lot of things within us, like dreams came back alive, desires, our hearts opened in a way, and it's like, oh, I want to experience, before I leave this earth, I want to experience life like this. I want to experience life with someone that loves me like this, or I want to experience individual things that this person, if I stay with them, will never happen. And
That's
so,
interesting.
yeah, so people said, okay, well, I'm going to make different choices. And that's why I look like that, even after they've been married 100 years and built this beautiful life together.
Yes.
It is beautiful, but that was not truly the definition of someone in that relationship. That was not truly the definition of their beautiful.
In the last episode, we were talking about this concept of what are you bringing to the table? And I can say, because I am not partnered up and I'm not married, that I don't subscribe to that. I don't subscribe to what do you bring to the table, because I don't need you to bring anything to my table, because I've acquired everything and I'm quite comfortable being by myself. I like to go to movies by myself. I like to eat dinner by myself, but I do want to have a partner to complement me. And so I think about when I was getting married, it was all about building this life. And so that table concept was important to me. At this age, I'm like, we can have a picnic on the floor. I don't need a table. I don't need you to bring anything to me. And I feel like it's interesting because I still have friends, and like I said, in different circles that still say that. What are you bringing to the table? And I was like, really? Are you finding any of that? Have you had those conversations or?
I'm finding that that conversation is still alive and well out there, especially in what I have seen is men asking women what they're bringing.
Yes.
And before, that was not a conversation that was had as far as what the woman was bringing,
Right.
because it was understood. So that is the shift. And it may be the shift because some people are looking more like for partnership, equal, like how these relationships are being defined differently. People are maybe vetting each other more to understand what will happen when we're together, because it's not necessarily going to end in a traditional marriage. So while we're spending time together, while we're extending this energy towards each other, what is that going to look like? And so that could be where that conversation comes from. I don't necessarily partake in the conversation, but I'm going to look in the positive way of feeling like that is possibly why people are asking those questions, right? Because if you have a wonderful life as an individual, then you may want to know, and you should at any rate want to know, this person that I'm allowing into my world, will they enhance it or keep it stable? You don't want to bring in someone disruptive that's going to tear things that you've built apart. And so I can see it as a vetting question.
I mean, no, when you put it that way, I was thinking, well, maybe I should invest a little bit more, because I make the worst decisions. I will end up being the Dateline victim one day, I'm sure, because I make horrible decisions there. Because I do tend to have this Pollyannish romantic, and I romanticize a lot of things that, I'm going to meet somebody at the Trader Joe's. It's going to be lovely, all these things. But I think it's important because I have acquired independence on my own. And there are women that have acquired the same thing and more to do those vetting questions. And I think that was a good point. That is a very good point.
Because they do have a term now called hobosexuals.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've never heard that one. Please tell me more.
So apparently the hobosexual is the person that's dating you and sweeping you off your feet, and it's moving the relationship in a clipped pace, because their goal is to move in with you, because they really don't have anywhere to stay.
Oh.
Once they're in, it's a little bit harder to get them out. So they are looking for ladies that have, nice homes and established, and, what do you do? So
That's interesting. I'll just take them to my closet and they'll be like, exit stage right. Like, what kind of crazy is going on in here? That's interesting. So, no, I was always against that. What are you bringing to the table? I'm bringing me. So That's
Right,
it.
'cause that question does have a negative connotation, and it's not
Yes.
what do you bring to the table. The conversation really is, which I think COVID brought about, what do we offer each other?
Yes.
How can we enhance each other's lives? Will we make each other happy? Will we be stable? Will we bring our
Mm.
best selves to each other? That's a better conversation. We didn't have those conversations. It's just like, I like you like me. We get
Right.
along really great. All right, get married. Or let's have a relationship. And it's like, it's so much more that needs to happen there as far as compatibility, same values, certain foundational, even economic equality, because if it's not there, that can create power struggle, imbalances, a lot of arguments, and those things are what people are fighting about. And that's what happened with COVID. It's like we're not compatible.
That's interesting. And so maybe there's a softer way or more inviting
Mhm.
way to have that conversation because it is a conversation worth having. My mom and I were talking the other day about this concept of being yoked with
Mhm.
someone and having same values. You know, it's a biblical term, but having
Yes.
same values, financial, and like you said, the compatibility on that level versus like this concept of a soulmate. I know some people don't believe in that. For me, when I think about the concept of a soulmate, it's more emotional. So it's that faith that you can't put a definition on it. I don't know why I feel this way about you. Whatever, there's a chemical, biological connection. That's not enough, obviously, because that can wane, and that can also, I deeply, passionately in love with you, and you're living in my closet underneath all my clothes now.
If that happens, so soulmates come to us, they are, ingrained in us in some way, outside otherworldly connections. And soulmates come to us at the point that they come to us. We are compatible. We are on the same wavelength in our life. So they're matching where we are at the time. What happens is someone in the soulmate relationship evolves and shifts. And then that's where you fall out of sync and the conversations don't make sense anymore. You're not connecting anymore. And you're like, what happened? And you can't get that relationship back. And that's because someone grew, someone changed, and someone went up and someone stayed. And so the soulmate relationship does sometimes evolve in a way where it's going to end. And a lot of people feel like that soulmate, they're my soulmate and I stay with them forever. And they're not understanding. You can have multiple soulmates. Your children can be your soulmates. Friends can be your soulmates. What you want really is a divine partnership. And a divine partnership is like your match of your energy equal. And you'll know the difference. It feels different because what you're giving out, you can give out in the relationship and it's reciprocated back. You don't feel depleted. You don't feel like you're losing anything. So you're moving in the same way, and that's a compatibility. So that's a different type of partnership. So that spark matches your spark. But a soulmate, yeah, you can fall out of sync with a soulmate, and it's like we have to know that, and it's okay to normalize. Relationships can last for a season. Some of them won't go the long haul, and it doesn't mean that because it didn't, something was wrong with it. And it doesn't mean when a relationship only has to end if we're fighting or something terrible and it's toxic. It's okay for us to learn how to leave in love and leave everybody intact and wish them well, and we just go our separate ways.
That's very interesting. And I have been exploring this concept of energy, like what you're
Mhm.
putting out and having that depletion. And so I had a conversation with a girlfriend of mine, and she was saying that she was involved in a relationship and the other person was involved in another relationship that she wasn't aware of. And it's like, I'm giving you my energy, and then you're taking that energy and expending it to someone else. And so it's not coming back into me. So that's an interesting concept and
Yes,
something I think is worth exploring. Yeah.
it is worth exploring. And in a lot of course, religious spaces wasn't talked about. So they
Mhm.
have that coping strategy or tool in your toolbox to navigate
Mhm.
relationships, friendships, jobs. So you're in spaces that's draining you and you don't know why. And you're just giving, and what we would tend to do is when it's draining us, I got to work harder.
Mm.
I need to do more. I got to go on a retreat, read a book, do all these things. Possibly the only thing you needed to do was excuse yourself from
Mm.
that space. But because that's not something we were taught to navigate, the opposite happens and then we're further depleted. And again, like I said, then that can cause medical issues.
That is so fascinating. I had never considered that. I think about just kind of exploring that a little bit deeper, this concept of love language. And so
Hmm.
one of my love languages is to give. Like I
Hmm.
love to give and I love to care for. Cooking, if I cook for you, that's because that's the way I express my love for you, baking and cooking. And when I think about some of the relationships that I've had, yes, I will double down that, okay, I'm going to expend more energy. And at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm so tired.
We all did. Yes. It's like, why I'm so tired. I'm doing more. And why am
Yes.
I not getting more in this space that I'm doing more? Because that's not your space. That's not where you belong. Right. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I like when you said that maybe you just need to exit. And I think that's the hard part because society puts the labels on it and we do it to ourselves. And we will say, oh, well, now, I'm divorced or now I've left this great relationship with this amazing man
Yeah.
or this amazing woman or whatever it is, this partner. And on paper, it looks fantastic.
Correct.
But again, the energy is
Right.
just gone. It's draining. I'm exhausted.
Is when you exit, people are like, why did you exit? And I'm going to say this. When you exit, everyone is accustomed to the story of they have to hear something bad. So if you didn't exit
Yes.
and it was not traumatic or terrible, then they're like, well, why did you leave? And
Yes.
so that's what I mean. And so that segues into a whole different conversation where you started about therapy or self-work. People really don't understand what it means to be healthy, really don't understand what love means, because it should not take something traumatic for you to walk away. It should be enough if it is emotionally disturbing you in a way or mentally disturbing you in a way. That's enough. Like, why do you have to let it get to where you're depleted? Then people accept like, okay, or we accept like, okay, I can leave now.
Yes, you're absolutely, that was profound because I do see that a lot too, because we want to see that the thing that happened, we want to be able to point to that. They were abusive. Oh, they didn't engage. And it's like, none of those things happened. I just was in the wrong space.
Correct.
It's okay.
It's okay because guess what? When you plant yourself in the wrong soil, you're not going to thrive. And that should be enough, right? That should be enough. You're not going to thrive. The other person is not going to thrive either because they're not in the right space.
Right. That's a good point. That's amazing. Well, for whatever reason, we're almost out of time. I don't know how that's happened. This is a good conversation. I'm going to do my last question. It's just a random question. But before we do that, are there any exercises or things that maybe anyone listening that may be struggling or thinking about, where they're at in their space, things that they can do for more self-reflection, in your opinion?
One of the easiest things to do and the simple things to do are really great, but it can be hard for many people is internally ask yourself, what do you want? And wait and listen for the answer. And one way that I tell people to figure it out to see if they can listen to themselves or not is like in the morning, ask yourself, what do you want for breakfast or
Mm.
whatever? What do you want to eat? And then see what it is. And then here's the thing. The answer that you give yourself, then in real life, is that what you planned for yourself, or were you going to eat what they told you to eat or do what they told you to do? And you can see how far or how close you are to being in alignment with your own desires and listening to yourself.
That's a great way to end it. That was a great way to end it. So before we ring off here, let me ask you a random. I don't know if you follow politics or the news or anything, but there's this whole thing about President Biden and his health, and
Mhm.
people are obsessed with that. Other than what's actually going on in our country right now, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it's easier to be obsessed with President Biden's health than look at what's actually happening in the country, because if you follow what's actually happening in the country, that may mean not that may mean it will mean you will be compelled or feel like you have to take action. And I may not want to take action, or I may not know where or how to take action or what to do. So it can make me feel helpless, distraught, or I don't want to engage. So I'll just look over here.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that the administration and other people are pushing the narrative over there. So don't look over here. Let's look over here in the past. It has nothing to do with the fact that you can't eat.
That happens
Yeah.
everywhere. And it's like,
Yes.
that's the level of knowing yourself and increasing your level of consciousness. And you'll be able to start sitting back and like, let me look at the whole lay of the land. Let me look at the whole picture instead of this one little square box over here. And from there, you can navigate your life better and you'll feel better. You actually feel more in control, more powerful, more settled when you know what's happening. Even if you make a decision and it's not the best decision, but you made the decision because you really thought about it and said, I know this may not be great, but I'm going to do it anyway. For me, that's still a better state than just saying, I'll just see what happens and leaving your life to just feel like you're blowing in the wind.
So ask that question in the morning about breakfast and then take it from there.
Yes, ask it all the time. Even when you're somewhere and they're like, hey, what do you want to do? Ask yourself, do I want to do this? Do I want to go out with my friends or I'm just going out because I have FOMO?
Right. And it's okay to say no and say yes to yourself.
If you can't say yes to yourself, then how are you really capable of saying yes in the other spaces that you need to?
That is a great way to end it. Andrea, I appreciate you. I'm so glad that we were able to connect. I wish you all the best and all the peace. And I hope that your journey gives you what you deserve, which is amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. That's a wrap for this episode of Well, Since You Asked Me. I hope this episode left you with something to think about, something to question, or maybe even something to share. I would like to thank our executive producer, John Dunson, audio and video technician, Ryan Sexton, and graphic designer, Ellen Jacobs. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and spread the word. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and keep asking the questions that matter. Bye.